Welcome to week 2 of Education 355, Teach Writing Across the Curriculum. This is our week 2 video. We are going to check and see what our learning outcomes are for this week and what our tasks are going to be. So as you navigate to your syllabus, you will see what our 3 learning outcomes are this week. You will be able to identify and define writing strategies in developing strategic writers in the elementary classroom, relate some instructional procedures to what's currently happening in some classrooms that you may be in, and also demonstrate strategic writing skills through a descriptive writing piece that you will be completing. In your textbook, you will be working through chapters 2 and 6. Again, this is the textbook that you'll be referring to and using. And you will be applying those learning outcomes through your interactive notebook, discussion boards, and your writing piece. So if we go back into our weekly content in our Blackboard course, and we go into week 2, you have here a link to your discussion board post, also the rubric to the interactive notebook, which you've already built and established at this point and shared with me, and then your descriptive writing rubric and Turnitin link so that you're able to turn it in to me. So before we dig into your discussion board post and then also your descriptive writing piece, your discussion board is going to connect to chapter 2 as you see here, and your descriptive writing is connecting to chapter 6. So let's just talk a little bit about chapter 2 before we discuss what your discussion board is going to be about and what your questions are. So chapter 2 talks about developing strategic writers. It's really important as teachers that we are empowering our students, we're building our students to, yes, be able to master our grade level content for writing and what the standards are for writing, but we really want it to become a place where they are self-regulating, and in order to do that, we have to be able to scaffold our learning and differentiate our practices so that we can meet each student where they are with regard to their writing abilities and skills and build them up to where we want them to be. Ultimately, we really want them to be students that are writing and they are excited about writing, they have great strategies that they're putting in place for writing. And so these chapters, this first chapter in particular, chapter 2, speaks to some writing strategies in order to build up their ability to be strategic writers. And so it's kind of a tricky wording to implement writing strategies for strategic writers, but that's really what the focus of this chapter is about. So chapter 2 speaks to 12 different strategies, and throughout the chapter they give examples of those strategies and kind of some ways that you might look for or apply some practices when you're trying to build up those abilities within students as they're writing. So those 12 strategies to develop strategic writers include elaborating, evaluating, formatting, generating, monitoring, narrowing, organizing, proofreading, questioning, rereading, revising, and setting goals. And those are found on page 34 of your textbook. And so this gives you a really nice figure of a quick snapshot of those 12 strategies. But what I want you to really take away from this is there are 4 of those that are known as self-regulating strategies. And so what that means is there are strategies that we want students to be able to do on their own because we have built up their capability to do so. And so we want them to be able to evaluate their writing on their own because you have supported their writing growth for them to be able to do that. We want them to be able to monitor their progress. We want them to know where they are in the writing process, like we spoke to in chapter 1. We also want them to question on their own, to kind of look at what they're doing and where they are and ask some good questions to be able to help develop into their final product that they're going to publish. And then goal setting is critical. As writers, it's important to have that end in mind. And so we want our students to be self-regulated in setting goals so that they know what they're working toward, and they also then know when they achieve it. If they know what their goal is and what their intention is at the end of that process as they publish that final piece, then they also will therefore know when they get there because they know what that goal is. So those 12 strategies are going to be the focus of chapter 2. But specific to that, I want you to pay particular attention to page 44 and 45 when you're looking in your text. And pay attention to what those self-regulating strategies are that I shared with you, but also what it means to be a capable writer. So page 45 lists about 10 or so different things that capable writers do. And these are really things that we want to build up our students to be able to do as they are writers. So they write depending on their purpose. They know who they're writing for and what they're writing for, and what their purpose is for that particular piece. They are able to use the writing process flexibly. So they understand the process, those 5 steps in the process, and they know that maybe they need to kind of go back and forth in the middle of that process as they're proofreading, drafting, revising, editing, and so they can kind of have some flexibility in that, and they know that before they get to the finished piece. They work on developing ideas and communicating effectively, and so they are very much intentional about what their idea is. They know what the end in mind is, and they're effective in getting that point across through their final product. They're seeking feedback is another important piece that we want capable writers to be able to do. We want them to seek feedback so that they can continue to grow and become strategic writers. We want them to monitor their communication in the piece of writing, but also know the format of their writing. So we want them to be able to know if this is their purpose for reading. So if my purpose is going to be just kind of general personal writing, then I might do a journal or a letter, which is what we also talked about in week 1, so that they know what their purpose is and what format they need to use in order to meet that purpose. That they use a variety of strategies, they regulate themselves, and those apply to those 12 strategies to develop strategic writers. We want them to be able to do those things. That they're paying attention to the simple things that are grammar and mechanics, and that they understand that their final product needs to be a professionally published piece. Obviously, that looks a little bit different than it does in kindergarten and 5th grade, 6th grade, but that they know and understand that we need to have some expectation of what our final product looks like. And that they're writing in order to communicate to their audience, that they know who they're writing to, and that they can therefore take feedback from their audience in order to know the effectiveness of that. Did they achieve their goal? Did they reach their target audience? So pay attention to those bullet points on that page about characteristics of your capable learners, because it's really what we're trying to get to. But as I shared at the beginning of this, really and truly, in order to meet the very diverse needs of the students in your classroom, you're going to have to scaffold your learning. And so starting on page 49, and this is where we then connect to our discussion board, it talks about scaffolding learning. And so if you think of this as a kind of I do, we do, you do approach, it's really kind of a gradual release so that you are building up their stamina, their confidence, and their self-esteem in writing. And so if you are scaffolding, you are really building in some supports for them, that as you're building in layers of support, you're also kind of taking away those bottom layers. So, you want to get them to where they're doing their writing independently, but you may have to do some modeled writing or shared writing before they can really get to an independent writing. So in your discussion board, talk about what does it mean to scaffold instruction for writers. Again, refer to chapter 2 as you're doing this. What are the 4 levels of support when scaffolding? And have you seen this? Have you seen it if you're a TA in a classroom that you're partnered with, if you're in a field experience in a partnership classroom? If you've not been in any of those situations and you don't have a field experience, then think of your experience in a classroom where you had writing. It could be at the university level, it could be at the high school, middle school, elementary level, but think of that and speak to a time when you may or may not have seen scaffolding happening. So before you answer that, though, I do want you to make sure that you understand what scaffolding is, because remember, you have to be able to cite evidence from the text to get full credit points for your discussion board. So make sure you know what scaffolding is, and then, yes, I have seen scaffolding because this is what scaffolding is and this is what I saw, or no, I haven't seen it because I did not see these things that scaffolding is. So be sure that you are citing your evidence. So then as we move forward into Chapter 6, we're digging into more descriptive writing. Let's talk a little bit about what you will be doing for your descriptive writing piece. So here is the rubric that you're going to refer to. So looking at Chapter 2, those figure 2.1, again, we're looking at those writing strategies for strategic writers. I want you to write a descriptive writing piece. I want you to write descriptively. Writing descriptively is supported through 5 techniques. And if you look in your Chapter 6 at page 137, it speaks to those techniques. So specific information, word choice, sensory images, figurative language, and dialogue. So with those 2 lenses in mind, so you have both your writing strategies for strategic writers, but also your techniques for descriptive writing. You have those 2 lenses in mind. I want you to think of a descriptive writing piece. Again, this is probably going to have some supplementary information in it so that I can see your process. I'm not wanting to see the writing process, but I do want to see what some of those writing strategies are and what some of those techniques for descriptive writing are. So you will probably submit your writing piece, your descriptive writing piece, but then have a supplementary page following that to explain to me what your writing strategies were that you chose, and then what your techniques were for descriptive writing. The topic is anything that you choose, so be creative. It's totally up to you. It's your piece. It's not from a student perspective, from a student in your classroom. But you are using strategic writing strategies as you write your descriptive piece. So again, as I shared, I want to see evidence of specific information, word choice, sensory images, figurative language, and dialogue. So I want to see that happening in your descriptive writing piece. And then evidence of at least 2 of those strategies for strategic writing. And these are from Chapter 2. Then you're going to probably have, for both of those pieces, a reflection. So that can be the same reflective piece that's following your descriptive writing piece. But you're going to pretty much, you're really just telling me, you're saying, this is where I integrated these 5 techniques. This is how I did it. And then this is how I integrated these 2 strategies. Making sure, again, that we have that expectation that your writing is grammatically correct, it's easy to read, it doesn't have distracting errors, because we want to be a model for what we're wanting for our students. So really, you're going to have your core descriptive writing piece. You pick the topic, anything you want to. Take a look at Chapter 2 and Chapter 6 specifically to get some ideas of things that you can write descriptively about. And make sure that you have that reflection piece so that there's no doubt that you have integrated those descriptive writing strategies and also your strategic writing strategies. Your descriptive writing techniques and your strategic writing strategies. So you want to make sure that you are doing that. If you have any questions, this one's kind of tricky because the wording's a little bit jumbled on your descriptive writing, strategic writing, and techniques and strategies and all that. So please let me know if you have any questions on it. But looking back at your week 2 tasks, that is what you're going to be doing. So again, you have your interactive notebook rubric. You should have shared it with me at this point, but if you go back into your week 1 content, I'm going to go back down here to get to the link for the interactive notebook. So as you are reading Chapter 2, yes, you have your discussion board prompt that you will be speaking to, but you also are going to have developing strategic writers. And so look at your rubric. Let's go there to see what you need to have for this entry for your strategic writers. So you want to make sure that as you're editing your interactive notebook that you have all 12 strategies identified, defined, and represented visually. So it should be a resource that you can use. We want to be able to picture things as we are learning about things. Make sure also that you identify within those 12 what are the 4 self-regulating strategies that we want students to be able to get to that point of regulating on their own and kind of mentally just going through that process because they're built up to that point. So discussion board, interactive notebook, and your descriptive writing piece are your tasks this week. Please reach out if you have any questions. Refer to your rubric, your syllabus, and this video.